Welcome to this week's episode of Roots and Resilience. Today we're joined by Dr. Yewande Oduwole, a rising star in the dental world, known for her inspiring work on Instagram and YouTube, where she educates, mentors, and promotes dentistry in a positive light. An award-winning dentist with a passion for cosmetic dentistry and patient care, she's been featured in Young Dentist magazine and works tirelessly to transform smiles and lives. Outside the clinic, she's a creative at heart into singing, volunteering, and even eyebrow threading. Let's dive in. Welcome, Yuande.
Hello, thank you for the intro. It's always weird when you hear someone read an intro about you. You're like, oh, is that me? Thank
Take
you.
it in, soak it in, girl.
I had to really try and kind of pick and choose like what to put in because I could still be saying that intro. You're very, very accomplished. You've got amazing CV, and you're very recently quite well, not very recently, but you're very early on in your
5
career, and
years,
it's
can
just
you
so
imagine?
exciting.
Half a decade of dentistry has just flown by. I literally remember qualifying like it was yesterday. But yeah, it's crazy how just time flies. But thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Had the pleasure of meeting you two lovely ladies in person. And when you told me about the podcast, I was like, yeah, sure. So well done for everything you're doing as well.
Oh, that's very sweet of you to say. Thank you. Thank you. So we normally start off just at the beginning of your journey, really. If you can introduce us into a little ins give us an insight into your background, childhood, growing up, a little bit about that. That would be lovely.
Sure. My childhood, I was born in Nigeria. Yes, my parents came here when I was about 3 years old and grew up in Southeast London. Went to a normal state school. Um, but when I was in secondary school, I always felt like I needed to work hard to, I don't know about your culture, but Nigerian culture is very much you need to study, 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 study. If you need to get anywhere in life, it's all about studying. And obviously, I saw how my parents kind of struggled. So I wanted to make sure that I was creating a good future for myself. So literally, I was a bookworm in secondary school, had my head down, and yes, studied my butt off basically.
You know what? That Tejal and I can 100% relate to that. And I think in the Asian culture as well, education is so important. And I think saying as you were saying, our parents didn't have much stability, not many resources, some resources for sure. But in terms of education, education was seen as something so important that would lead to stability. So like you, we get the whole bookworm vibe. These glasses numbers just kept going up and up and up in senior school. So amazing. The parallels between the cultures actually is really interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I heard I've got a lot of Asian friends, so I know what it's like. But what it just instills that those values of like hard work. Um, so yeah, that was sort of school, and then got into sixth form after I got my GCSEs. So far, everything was going really well. You know, when you gain that confidence, you're like, you know what? I am good at science. Oh, I'm good at this and you get that sort of subtle confidence. I don't know about you guys. Do you remember your GCSE grades?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember working for my GCSEs. Like I can still I remember I took them super seriously, and you look back and everyone's just like, the A levels are the ones that matters. GCSE is not that important. But I took it really seriously.
For sure. I think that's our first big break, like
Mm.
almost like proving yourself. Like, okay, can I do this? So yeah, after GCSEs, then it was A levels. I actually chose to do the international baccalaureate rather than.
Wow. And what made you choose to do the IB?
So at the time, I wasn't super set on dentistry. I kind of thought I knew I was good at science. I was thinking, do I want to go into medicine? Do I want to go into dentistry? Maybe I might do something completely different. And I thought that IB kept things open because
Mm.
you studied 6 subjects. And I thought, you know what? Let's just do this. And I heard that the IB kind of teaches you extra skills because you're having to balance basically 6 A levels. Whether that was a good idea, but the IB, I remember those 2 years. It was tough. It was very tough. But during my 2 years of IB, that's when I realized, oh, okay, dentistry is what I want to do. I actually, old school, I looked up on the internet. I was just like, what is a career in dentistry like? And just reading about it, I was like, oh, you know what? This sounds like something I would do. And with medicine, I just felt it is a bit depressing. Nobody really wants to see you as a doctor. They're kind of coming to you when they're ill. And I'm quite a joyful, happy, bubbly person. I didn't want to be leaving work every day like, wow, this is real sad. I don't know if you guys had any, were you always set on dentistry or did you have to deliberate?
No, no, I very, very, again, really relate to your kind of dilemma between like medicine and because I assumed because I was good at maths and sciences that I would be doing medicine. So
Mm,
in my mind, I not kind of like had my heart set on it, but I just presumed that's where the path would lead. And
mm,
in between, for me, dentistry wasn't even an option, but it was just one conversation I had,
mm.
with somebody at like a careers convention who kind of just opened up my eyes to dentistry being a potential um, a prospective career. And then I just explored it. I was like hustling for work experience because we didn't have any dentists in the family, and this is going back probably a little bit before your time, but we had to write letters at the time to like different practices, and yeah, it was really kind of there was no kind of I don't think there was much information out there on the internet, to be honest. So you had to really kind of just scavenge for any information you get, talk to as many people and stuff. And so, yeah, I can relate. Interestingly, the information that you found or you read online that may have helped affirm, like, or reaffirm your decision to pursue dentistry, now that you're a few years in, like, how does it compare?
Oh, good question. Actually, I relate with the work experience side of things. I had to actually email 20 different practices. Work experience is so hard to get, which is why now, whenever a student messages me, I'm like, yes, come, because I really, really like I know the struggle when you don't have any dentists in your family. Like even if I can just give them a day, I'm like, come, because I feel like it's so important to give you that exposure. But yeah, now that I've seen what dentistry was like then and the research, I do think it compares. I think it's quite accurate. Obviously, things are changing, technology, we were just talking about AI and all these kind of things in dentistry is constantly changing. However, I feel the basis of it, the work that you're doing, the practicality, getting to improve people's confidence, all these kind of things, why I decided to do it. I think I am doing it now, which I really enjoy. So yeah, and we're missing a really big part of my journey because I didn't get in straight away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Take us back.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
Literally. So after sixth form, again, like I said, everything was going so smoothly. I was like, yeah, I got this. This is fine. I decided dentistry was what I wanted to do, doing my IB. And as you do your exams. And one fateful day, so I did loads of mocks, everything, exams came. And then it was one of the exams, I think it was biology, either biology or chemistry. I literally skipped the whole question by accident. So at the end of the exam, I thought I'd finished, but right at the back, there was a lovely 22 mark question. And they came round, invigilator picked it up and was like, oh, you didn't want to answer this one at the back. And literally, you could just hear me burst out into tears. And the whole, exam halls are like dead silent. Everyone was kind of just like, because I was just like, oh my gosh, no, can I have it back? Because at this time, I had already had two offers from Manchester and Liverpool. So
Wow.
literally, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is it. All I need to do is get the grade. So I got the paper back, and it turns out, well, they didn't give it back in the exam. Exam's done. But I waited for some time. Results came, and I was 1% away from actually getting in. And I was thinking, I could have literally written a couple of sentences. I even paid for it to get remarked. At the time, I think it was like £200 for a remark. I had to like beg my parents, like, please, let's try and see. And still, it was 1%. So I had to swallow my pride and make a really tough decision. Do I do the whole year again, or do I go and study biomed, which I had an offer for as a backup? So at however old it was it like 18, 16? You had to make such tough life decisions because it could have changed the trajectory of my life, whichever one that I picked. Luckily, I had some really good people around me. You know, my faith played a huge part in that period, praying. I think I actually isolated myself for a bit because I was just like, God help me, like going back to the younger year, this is swallowing lots of pride. And you know, when you're like so used to being the model student, you have a lot of pride built up. But I feel like in life, you go have moments where that has to be knocked down so you can be humble. So I
Yeah.
feel like God really said, Yewande, I need to humble you. So this is what I'm gonna do.
That's such
That
a
is such a beautiful way of looking at it. Sorry, Tejal, to interrupt, but I know we're both going to really resonate with this faith situation. And that is one of the reasons we're so excited to have this conversation because I think I can relate too. I feel like this past year I've had like really, really high highs and then the lows are like super low lows. And you think, why me? Like it's not fair. What, what's going on? And you're totally right. It's a humbling experience. And you talked about how your faith has helped you get through that. What did faith give you?
Faith gives me joy. Literally, it literally gives me joy because I know that obviously for people that aren't, religious, this might seem strange, but I feel like God always works everything together for your good and there is a greater plan. And, I feel like the guidance, the scriptures, the values in that troubling season, I had those scriptures to hold on to, give me that joy that, you know what, I might be in this situation now. And even if I don't get in the second time around or not, I always know that God has a greater plan. And I think that just gives me an inner peace that, you know what, no matter what, God's got you.
that's really amazing. And quite clearly that having those sets of beliefs gives you so much strength and inner courage and sort of supports you during very difficult, challenging times and facing, a challenging time or could be like an adverse situation quite early on. It's really lovely to hear you say that actually your faith is something that supported you through that time.
Mhm.
Now, if we rewind, like to get to that point was an 18-year-old who's actually surrendering to God's greater plan. How did you get there? Was this faith a real part of your upbringing? Was it something that was like part of your family life that allowed you to have such strong values at quite a young age?
Yeah, so my mom always took me to church as a child. You know, when you first go, you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a bore. Why, mom? And you don't realize, but the more they take you, you're subconsciously taking it all in. Even if at the time you're like, I don't want to be here, you are naturally, it's all being downloaded into your head. So as I got older, I started to really understand it for myself and gain an interest and not being forced to go to church, actually wanting to go on my own accord. And I think it's just allowed me to just build such a good foundation. And the community as well. You know, I love Sundays. It's always a good end to the week because I know I've got church. You know, I'm in the choir, and it's just so nice to just end the week on a teaching or whatever week you've had, Sunday's coming. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have any sort of faith religious that you believe in.
Yeah, so interestingly, that yeah, we've kind of been grown up like we've around I think our mother's been more kind of the spiritual pillar of our family. And so we didn't have like a regular day of the week where we would go to like the temple. So we follow the Jain faith, which is a very, very old one of the oldest Indian religions and quite a very small minority. So I think initially I found it really hard to identify it as it because we were practicing at home, but very few people had heard of it outside the home. So we almost didn't weren't able to even be able in a position to kind of explain what it is. So it kind of got a little bit confusing at school and things like that. But I guess when you've been having exposed to it from a young age, you have that familiarity. And I
Mm,
think over time, it's been something that you kind of make your own.
yeah.
And you kind of sort of exactly like you actually want to go and be part and participate in certain events, festivals, be part of things that are going on at the temple and stuff. So I think for me, what I've come to realize, and again, if you're listening and you're not, you don't identify with a faith, that's quite okay. But I just feel like it's to get through life and to make sense of life. I feel like everybody needs to have a framework or a set of beliefs that that allows them to kind of understand why bad things happen to good people, and so these kind of situations where it's really hard to find an explanation for or a logical explanation for what is it, how do you make sense of that, and how do you make peace with that, or not even make peace with that, but how do you come to terms with it and be able to kind of not get super overwhelmed. And I think that framework, whether it's spirituality, whether it's a faith or religion that you identify with, or whether it's none of that and you've just you've got a framework. I feel like I don't know how you can get through life without something like that. Personally, this is my view. Um, and yeah, I love the fact that you said that it brings you joy. And I think that is such a lovely thing for you to share. But I was going to ask you, like, having Sunday, which is your Sabbath, essentially, it's like your switch off from your day-to-day week, like, week, or, you could have the best week, the worst week, whatever. That's your time for yourself, to be part of a community and to be spiritually connected. Um, I feel that it's almost like in a world now where everything is so fast paced and it's, we're so distracted and your mind is really fragmented with so much like stuff online, offline, and you're all over the shop. That almost like having this tradition of a Sabbath is like your natural circuit breaker. And I think there's so much value to gain from having that protected time in your week just for without those distractions. Um,
Yeah.
tell me how it plays out in sort of your life.
So yeah, like exactly, you basically summarized it. Having that Sabbath day just kind of recenters you, ready for the week ahead. And obviously, as dentists that we all are, there are some days in clinic where you're just like, oh my gosh, am I capable of this? Or something goes wrong, where you have to like have a lot of patience and doing some restorative work, and this clamp isn't going down, or this, you have to really, there's many times where you could just be like, nothing's going right. But I think you just have to calm yourself down. And I think it really teaches you how to speak positively to yourself, because there's a scripture that says there's power of life and death is in the tongue. So it's really important that what you say has a lot of meaning. So I try not to put myself down. I try not to like swear and all these things, because I feel like it's really powerful, the words that you say. Obviously, everyone to each to their own, but I think it's so important. Words hold so much weight, and
Yes.
especially the
Yeah,
words.
I totally agree. I think, do you know, I'm reading this book and it's talking about how words create emotions and these emotions create actual things and feelings inside your body. So actually a lot of diseases or issues can be because of things you've held in your body, like resentments and grudges and all those nasty emotions like anger and things like that. And speaking to yourself really kindly is so important in dentistry. And like you said, what we see on Instagram, people always just post their nice things or their best things or the things that went well, but actually day to day, a lot of things happen that might be outside your control, or you might get some difficult scenarios that you have to deal with. And this is where I suppose faith, all your spirituality, all your positive self-talk all comes in and is so, so important. Which is great. So I really do agree and resonate with that. Self-talk is key. But I always feel like you have to catch yourself out. I don't know if you get that, but sometimes when I'm speaking to myself, I'm like, oh no, no, you got to be positive, like be nice to yourself. It's so
Yeah,
nice. It's so easy to tell other people and give other people great advice, but giving it to yourself can be so hard.
100%. I agree. I think we are our own worst critics.
Yeah.
And I know you do content as well, both of you. And the world of social media, it can take quite a lot to put yourself out there and not feel like, oh my gosh, is this irritating? The amount of times I've like recorded videos, I'm like, oh, Yewande, come on, like, hey guys. I'm like, you're so, I literally tell myself, this is so annoying, but you're like, no, this is how you want to speak. This is your video. And if somebody thinks it's annoying, that's their problem. I think it's so important to just do you, because if
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
allow voices like outsiders, then we're not gonna do anything, are we?
No, you're not. And you are you're constantly second guessing everything you're doing. And like, you're constantly worried about how it's being perceived. And actually, you lose yourself in the whole process where actually you just have to stick to be you, be who you are, be proud of who you are, let the world see who you are, be authentic, be yourself. And then naturally, there'll be people who do resonate or do kind of vibe, other people won't. And that's cool. That's fine. That's like,
Yeah.
each to their own.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you because I've gone through this. Have you ever found that when things are not going your way, that your faith has sort of wavered?
Mm. Yeah, of course, of course. Obviously, that whole dental school situation was quite a hit to my faith. I think now that I look back, it kind of all worked out. But at the time, I was thinking, wait, God, this isn't supposed to happen. This is not the story I imagined. What's going on? So my faith definitely took a dip during that time. Even something as small as a driving test, I failed so many times, my practical test, and I was just like, God, what's going on? So there are times where you're just like, really? But then I think it's all about building resilience out of the situation because even though I was devastated, in the end, I appreciate it 10 times more. And I don't, I remember the journey that it took me to get there rather than the result. And I think it's really beautiful when there's always a journey to something because you always appreciate the end result. So, yeah, I guess in life, there are so many situations where we probably feel like these things aren't going my way. I don't know if you guys can think of any in your lives, and but you just have to kind of try and bounce back and look at what it's teaching you in that moment.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's a lesson and a blessing in everything. I really do believe that, but I haven't always believed that. And I think sometimes the beauty of hindsight can help reaffirm that.
Hmm.
Nell, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and also I think I've had times as well in my life where my faith has wavered. And like why me? It's not fair. Why me? Why me? Why me? And some people, just reframe that to try me. Like, it's about life is gonna try you, life is gonna test you, and that's there for a reason. Like Tedros said, it's a blessing. You will grow through these things. And actually, I'm really intrigued. So did you do that year in biomed? Or did you then take a gap year? Just going back to that.
So I declined. It was biomed at Warwick. Warwick is such a prestigious uni. I actually said,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that. And I took the year to do literally that one subject again. But I worked. I actually worked in All Saints. I worked in Apple. I worked as a TV extra. I worked in restaurants. So like that gap year, I really just said, you know what? I'm gonna just go into the working world regardless. And that teaches you skills in itself. And I think one aspect of dentistry that's so important is people skills. Some people have it, some people don't. But I think working in retail, working in customer facing environments really ingrains that in you, and you can actually brought some of those skills into dentistry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a positive use of that time in that year. And naturally, all of those things are transferable. Those whatever skills you picked up that time will have fueled, your progress as a dentist.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people find themselves in situations where it's exactly this, like you've got everything's lined up, and then something happens, you miss your grades and you miss your place, and then you're kind of at this point where you're having to take a year out, and that can feel like the worst thing when your friends are moving on and you feel like super kind of left behind. And actually, looking back, 1 year in the grand scheme of things is absolutely nothing, but at the time, it can be so crushing. However, I believe a lot of people who are successful, and success means different things to different people, but a lot of people who have this fire in their belly is often because they face some form of adversity at some stage in their sort of academic journey, or in during their degree, or even getting into dentistry. And I feel that really, and when they do get it, they feel so grateful that they've got it, that they really are kind of like really kind of spurred on to make the most of it and work really hard and make the most of that opportunity. And I think I honestly feel like not everybody talks about their stumbles, but actually, if you speak to a lot of people, especially a lot of people who are doing very, very well in their respected choice of field or specialty or whatever it is, you'll be surprised how many of those people have had, they failed, 1 year of dental school, or they failed some major exam, or there's been some challenge or big
Sure.
adversity.
For
Yeah.
sure. No, and like I think the biggest blessing that came out of all of this was it did fuel a fire in my belly to start my YouTube channel. And this is the birth of my online presence. So if I got in straight away, I probably might not have started it. And
Yeah.
literally my first YouTube video, I just opened up my laptop and it's the grainiest video you've ever seen in your life. It was literally a video in my university halls. And I said, guys, look, I'm in dental school now. This is my story. And if you are going through the same thing, this is what you have to do, X, Y, Z. And that gained traction. So I started making more videos about life in dental school. And then I started my Instagram, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So I think the thing about my Instagram, I've literally started it since I think like second year of dental school, and then just kept on building on it. So there's been like a journey, and now I like mentor students that are. I know you do the same now, well, where like you help people get through dental school, and I find that so rewarding because I've literally been there, done that, and seeing them come through the other side is like, oh my gosh, wow.
I
Amazing.
know they're like you get really motherly. I feel like a mother hen sometimes, you know. I
They're
get really
I call them my kids sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, my kid. I'm like, Yewande, these are like 18-year-olds. Stop
Yeah,
it.
exactly, exactly. But that's so interesting because I know you do a lot of content creation now. So imagine if you never set up that YouTube channel, you would probably never pursued your presence online. And I think, firstly, well done for your consistency.
Thank
Posting is easy, like
you.
it takes a lot of time, and I'm sure you do a lot of things behind the scenes and spend a lot of time creating content, editing it, writing captions, and you're nodding because I do Instagram on a much kind of smaller level and smaller scale. And I find that's a lot. So if you're creating content constantly, consistency is really important. So well done. And in terms of content creation, do you do more of that on the side now? Do you do that for as a side thing, or how does that work?
Yeah, so a lot of my content creation just comes from the heart, and I actually enjoy it. As time consuming as it is, I find it quite fun to create and keep people updated. I think it'll be a lot of people's nightmare keeping people updated on everything they're doing, but I like it. I feel like, I'm going to this event or there's this case or something like I'm like, you know what, it's just sharing what I'm doing on a day to day. But yeah, it is time consuming. I think I spent like an hour and a bit or 2 hours yesterday on a story because I wanted to like talk people through like gum disease and things like that, and even thinking about what to write and doing a post. It's a lot of effort, but I see it as like my online diary, but it's visual to
Mhm.
everybody,
Yeah,
and it's like I want people to come to my Instagram and it's like a representation of me. So there's some teeth there, but there's me as well. Um, and then naturally companies start to notice that and they want to work with you. So it has kind of turned into, inadvertently a side hustle, so to speak. But it's just been very organic, which I think is quite nice.
absolutely. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's also inspiring for people who may be in dentistry or any other profession that sometimes just putting yourself out there opens so many doors, and just be open yourself to opportunities because you don't know what's around the corner. You might find something else you enjoy. You might find something to supplement your income. You just never know. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, just put yourself out there, and it's really, really important.
How do you keep up with that level of content creation whilst working as a dentist as well? Okay, I understand as a dental student, you have a lot more flexibility with your time. Like, where do you generate time from? Or are you really disciplined with your calendar? Like, do you have people supporting you with this? Like, just help us understand.
I'm laughing at this because I was literally talking to my friend this morning, one of my best friends. She's a doctor, And she was like, Yewande, I prescribe you sleep. You need to sleep because because you're just doing things back to back. So even today, like, I'm working, then I had like an appointment, then I had this podcast, and then I was gonna go for dinner. Like I try and squeeze so many things in a day, which is gonna be unsustainable when I am obviously I want a family and etc. But right now I feel like a bit of like a superwoman. I organize my diary myself, try and do editing myself, all these things myself. I try to delegate the editing to somebody else, but I get quite like, oh, I don't like this, and I'd rather just do it myself. So I work in shifts. So on Mondays I start at 2. So in the morning I'll try and do like, okay, this content, or try and do whatever meeting I need to do, or go to the gym. So when I find pockets of time during after shifts, I'll be able to fit that in. It is a lot, but I think I found a way to kind of do it all. However, how sustainable that is, I don't know.
We'll check this time next year, Yewande.
Let's see. I'm trying my best, but look,
But you've got a massive smile on your face, and I think everything you're doing, you do derive some level of excitement, joy, or something from it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be, I guess you just wouldn't continue doing it. And
exactly.
so I think, keep going, keep going. Clearly, you bring so much like joy, light, positivity. To on your obviously we've met you in person, so we know that for a fact. But equally, like online as well. So keep going with it. But then, do you know what? Like you're in control, right? So if you needed to take a step back, or if you needed to kind of tone it down a bit, that's cool too.
It is. And you know what? I feel like my mission was to make people see dentistry in a positive light. And that's what I try and do online. So share what we're doing. I mean, the highs, there's lows, everything. Just come with me on my dental journey. And it's not like I knew what my future would be like. I literally just took people on the journey so people can see, look, she didn't just arrive here. There has been a backstory. And I think to anyone thinking about social media, just see it as like a serendipity vehicle. There's someone that I watched on YouTube when I was going through like dental school stuff, was Ali Abdul. He's actually a doctor, but he's like this
Yeah, he's great.
YouTuber,
Yeah,
really, really good. And he talked about social media being like a serendipity vehicle, which is allowing something good to happen to you without you trying, just putting that into the atmosphere and allowing it to work in your favor. So if you're not out there, how are people going to find you, really?
Yeah.
exactly. And I really do believe, I know it might sound a bit delulu and a bit cuckoo, but like what you put to the universe hears it and it throws stuff back at you in your path so you come across it. So just like you say, put yourself out there to the universe, to your environment, and you're right, otherwise people won't know that you exist. And someone's going to vibe with you, someone's going to vibe with your energy, someone's going to feel your beat, feel your rhythm, and there are some amazing things that could happen. So yeah,
Exactly.
I agree. I think it took me so long. I used to literally cry about being on Instagram, and now I'm finally on Instagram, and you see the difference. You just see like opportunities come your way.
What was
Um,
your why didn't you like it, if you don't mind me asking, what was your barrier to it?
Yeah, great question. Do you know what? I just felt like I wasn't good enough to be on Instagram. Like, who would want to listen to anything I want to say? And now, when I say this out loud, it just is literally a limiting belief that I've created myself in my head. And I just had to undo that. But it took me a bit of time and a little bit of work to undo that myself. And I know lots of people may be facing a similar thing or thinking similar things, thinking, can I do this? Like, who's really going to listen? But actually, at the end of the day, you're doing it for yourself. And
Mm,
it almost got to the point where I was like, do you know, I just have to do this to prove to myself that I can speak on video. And
yeah.
it's amazing because lots of people might see my videos and think, oh, I've always loved being on Instagram. I find it so easy. But it's been a process.
Mm, for sure. I completely
Yeah.
agree.
And
Um,
yeah, no, and I think, but once you do it once and you realize actually, the world didn't collapse, and like you didn't have to like bury yourself under a duvet, and you realize, okay, then that's okay, like nothing bad happened, and then you do another one, and then it kind of snowballs, and you realize actually that fear that you had within you, it's sort of, you kind of just shove it to one side and be like, this is actually not as bad. I'm somebody who was like so anti-Instagram. Like I was
Really?
literally, I was like, I don't need Instagram. I don't want to. I had my reasons, and I was just very happy. I deleted my Facebook. I had no social media presence for for a good, I would say, 6 years. And
Wow.
I mean I had WhatsApp, but like I didn't engage otherwise. I used to think LinkedIn was a joke, like for dentists, like what a waste of time. And oh my goodness, how wrong was I? And I just kept feeding this kind of whatever it was, being like, I don't need it, I don't need it, I don't need it. And yes, you can very much have a happy career and not engage.
Yeah, of
But
course.
with the kind of stuff that, that I want to do, the kind of impact I want to have, it was just like, Tedra, you just got to get with the times. And the thing is, when you're using these tools and as with intention, it's really not that bad.
No,
Um,
for
it's
sure.
really not that bad.
I think it's always good to ask, like, what is my why? What is your why for doing
Yeah.
these things?
Absolutely. And have some form of faith, whatever it might be. Faith in yourself to start with.
Exactly. That is it.
Oh, I'd
Just
love I'd love to see more of you at church. Actually, Nell, do you want to share that story when we went to church one day, the one in King's Cross?
Yes, I went to church one day and I had so much fun that I was like to my sister, we need to go to church. So then one Sunday, me and my sister went to church and it was one of the churches near King's Cross Station. I remember it so well and I loved it. I was like singing and like clapping and the energy. Do you know what it was you one day? It was the energy. I felt the
yeah.
energy, I felt the vibes, I felt the rhythm, and we loved it. We had such
Good.
a nice time. It was
Oh, I need to
great.
bring you guys. You need to come again.
We would love to hear you sing you one day.
Oh, there are some Sundays I do put it on my story, so you gotta tune in on
We
a
watch it out.
Sunday.
Tune in
Definitely,
on a
definitely.
Sunday. Amazing. And actually, I had one question that I was meaning to ask you during the conversation because of what you said. Do you talk to God? When you were like, when you said something about, oh God, why is, and I just, the way you said it made me wonder. So I thought I'd
Yeah,
ask.
for sure. So obviously there's prayers. I do my prayers, but when I pray, if anyone walks into the room, you'd almost think like I'm talking to myself, like it's a friend there. Like literally, I will be having a conversation, like, oh my God. Like I feel like it's meant to be a relationship. That's how I see Christianity. It's not just like religious, like do this, do that. It's actually a relationship with God. Like the same way you'd have a relationship with your friends. That's how I see a relationship with God. And the way that we speak is through the scriptures. So then I would like it's weird to explain it if people haven't done it before, but I sit in my room, have my like quiet time, have like my devotional Bible, and then like we're having a chat. And then I back it up with like the scriptures, and you feel like a sense of like peace, even though you're not hearing like exact words back to you. You may do. There might be times where I like, oh, okay. And then the way I know
Yeah.
that it's not just me, it's God, is if it matches up with like the scriptures. So, or you feel like a sense of peace. So it's kind of like it is a dialogue. Yeah.
I think that's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, it's
And I
okay.
do I do wonder sometimes, like, I think we all get them, like these little inner whispers. Like I call them inner whispers, and I feel like sometimes when you get really quiet, or when you go for a walk by yourself, or you've got a bit of solitude, suddenly like it's like you start getting I start getting ideas, and I still kind of have like these little kind of inklings. And
Yeah.
it's so easy. I'm sure we all have all of this all the time, but we're so distracted that we just don't tune in. And I just wonder if there is like that kind of universe at play who's like kind of talking to you. I mean, you can call it a higher power, universe, God, whatever.
Yeah,
That's
for
kind of
sure.
like kind of engaging with you, but you've got to like tune into the right frequency to listen.
And don't get me wrong, like I feel like a lot of people think, oh, because you're Christian, you're perfect. Like I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I am, we all do things in life where we're just like, it's not always to the book. But I feel like when you go back to God in that quiet time, then you can have that, like you say, that you feel the inner whispers, the peace, the solitude. So I think it's so important to constantly recenter yourself in those environments.
Yes. And create time to do that.
Yes, exactly.
Need
Which
to put time aside, which I'm like really bad at. But this conversation has really inspired me, and I know will have inspired our listeners to actually you know what? Whether it be putting time aside for your faith, but just put time aside for silence for yourself and see
Yeah,
what
Even if it's
create
5 minutes.
create your own Sabbath or try and like
Yeah.
factor in some kind of Sabbath in your week. And I think there is something so amazing to gain by having that discipline
Yeah.
around it because I will admit I'm not. For me it's a bit more ad hoc. Like I still do my sort of routine every day, but the stuff that really kind of fuels me, honestly, sometimes I have to like take a week off work just to
Mm.
focus on it. Whereas I feel like if there was an element of it ingrained into my calendar, I feel like that might be even more transformational. But that's been
Cool.
really inspiring actually to try and integrate that.
Try, everyone who's listening, try and have some quiet time, whether it's 5 minutes or even just minute, just in silence, just to allow yourself to sit with your thoughts and just see what comes to you in that moment.
That's amazing, an amazing pearls of wisdom to wrap up this conversation. It has been such a delight speaking to you, Yewande. We really are so excited to watch your journey get onwards, and thank you so much for sharing so openly and so beautifully.
Thank you for having me. God bless
No.
you.
Oh, God bless. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to hit follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and to hit subscribe on YouTube so that you never miss a new one. It really helps if you rate and review the show, and if you found this episode valuable, share it with a friend, family member, or colleague. We appreciate your support and we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.